begin, I want to introduce someone who has been very critical to the development of Louisiana Key Academy. Her name is Kayla Reggio, and she's sitting next to me. Kayla Reggio has been involved with the school since the doors opened. She came to us as a certified academic language therapist, which she got that degree from Southern Methodist University, and she also pursued her QI, which is a qualified instructor, which means that she is now able to certify others to be certified academic language therapists. And she's taken the lead at our school in developing our teachers in that certification path to being a cult so that they can best serve the dyslexic kiddos here in Baton Rouge and surrounding areas. In addition to that incredible work, she has partnered alongside Dr. Laura Cassidy, our school founder, with Drs. Bennett and Sally Shaywitz. So she's just been an incredible advocate for finding and knowing the truth about dyslexia and applying the most up-to-date scientific evidence to our instruction in the classrooms, and we are so thankful for that. In addition, she is leading our Dyslexia Resource Center, the director at the Dyslexia Resource Center, which is our sister organization. And they have a really incredible mission to work with our community about understanding dyslexia, certifying teachers in that coursework to become certified academic language therapists, and also offering tutoring services to students who may or may not be at the school. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kayla Reggio, and let's all welcome her.
Thank you, Heather. So Heather is, like she said, the principal at Louisiana Key Academy, and we want to thank Louisiana Key Academy for hosting this wonderful event. We'd also like to say thank you to Our Lady of the Lake Children's Hospital Pediatric Development and Therapy Center. They are the ones who sponsored this event and provided the food for you guys, so big thank you to those people. We're excited today to have Drs. Bennett and Sally Shaywitz here. If you notice on the edge of the tables, there are some note cards. We're going to hold all questions till the end. So if you have a question, jot it down on the note card. We'll have some folks come by and pick those up, and we'll do questions after the completion. Okay. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Drs. Bennett and Sally Shaywitz. Sally E. Shaywitz, MD, is the Audrey G. Ratner Professor in Learning Development at Yale University and co-founder and co-director of the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity. As a physician scientist, Dr. Shaywitz both carries out the cutting-edge research to advance the science of dyslexia while also devoting herself to caring for children and adults who are dyslexic. Her studies provide the basic framework and details for the 21st century scientific understanding of dyslexia. Dr. Shaywitz's ongoing neurobiological and longitudinal epidemiological studies track a population-based cohort from kindergarten entry to mature adulthood and have provided contemporary knowledge of the prevalence, gender composition, universality, and precursors, persistent, and long-term outcome of dyslexia. Dyslexia is highly prevalent, affecting 1 in 5, and represents over 80% of all learning disabilities. Dr. Shaywitz's more recent studies have provided the long-sought empiric evidence for the unexpected nature of dyslexia. Dr. Shaywitz is currently studying reading and dyslexia in a disadvantaged population attending a charter school system and in disadvantaged students attending a public charter school specialized for dyslexia. In a recent paper published in the November 2015 issue of Journal of Pediatrics, she found that the achievement gap in reading is present as early as first grade and persists through adolescence. Another recent study focuses on the development of vocabulary in dyslexic children, and still another examines the economic consequences of dyslexia in adults. She has developed a new instrument, the Shaywitz Dyslexia Screen, for use by teachers to efficiently and reliably screen kindergartners and first graders for dyslexia, which was released October 2016. A study in progress examines the relationship between measures of adult literacy and the reading of those same adults as children. Additional studies in progress use fMRI to investigate the effects of the pharmacological agent atomoxetine on reading and attentional mechanisms in dyslexia. Dr. Shaywitz is the author of over 250 scientific articles and chapters, as well as the award-winning book, Overcoming Dyslexia, which details fundamental scientific findings on dyslexia and how to translate this scientific knowledge into policy and clinical practice. The book has been translated into numerous languages, including Brazilian Portuguese, Dutch, Japanese, Korean, and Mandarin, and is the recipient of the Margot Merrick Book Award and the NAMI Book Award. In addition to critical acclaim, Overcoming Dyslexia has been the top-selling trade book on dyslexia since its publication. Dr. Shaywitz is an elected member of the National Academy of Medicine. Within the National Academies, she is annually selected as one of the best doctors in America. Her awards include, among others, as Honorary Doctor of Science degree from Williams College, the Townsend Harris Medal of the City College of New York, the Distinguished Alumnus Award of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, the Achievement Award in Women's Health from the Society for Advancement of Women's Health Research, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry's Sidney Berman Award. Dr. Shaywitz has served on the congressionally mandated National Reading Panel and the Committee to Prevent Reading Difficulties in Young Children of the National Research Council and by presidential appointment, on the National Board of the Institute for Education Scientists of the U.S. Department of Education. She has also spoken at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Bennett A. Shaywitz, M.D., is the Charles and Helen Schwab Professor in Dyslexia and Learning Development at Yale University Center and co-founder and co-director of the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity. As a physician scientist, Dr. Shaywitz performs cutting-edge neuroscience research to advance the neuroscience of dyslexia and cares for children and adults who are dyslexic. Both a child neurologist and a neuroscientist, Dr. Shaywitz is dedicated to ensuring that scientific progress in dyslexia is translated into policy and practice. His research applies functional magnetic resonance imaging to understand the neurobiology of reading and dyslexia in children and adults. These studies have been critical in identifying a neural signature for dyslexia, making a previously hidden disability visible, and for the first time demonstrating the brain basis for the lack of fluency in dyslexia. Recent research by Dr. Shaywitz examines differences in brain connectivity between dyslexic and typical reading children, revealing that reading fluency and connectivity is disrupted between reading and attention systems. A recent paper published in November 2015 issue, Journal of Pediatrics, found that the achievement gap in reading is present as early as first grade and persists through adolescence. More recent studies focus on the development of vocabulary, and others examine the relationships between adult literacy and the reading of those same adults as children. He is the author of over 300 scientific papers. He has been elected to the member of the National Academy of Medicine. He has spoken at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and here in U.S. at the Congressional Wives Club and U.S. Senate field hearings. Along with Dr. Shaywitz, he is the recipient of the Lawrence G. Crowley Distinguished Lectureship at Stanford University, the Annie Glenn Award at Ohio State University, the Distinguished Lectureship at Bank Street College of Education, and the Stoll Distinguished Lecture at Pennsylvania State University. Dr. Shaywitz received his BA from Washington University in St. Louis, where he was elected to Phi Beta Kappa, and his MD from Washington University School of Medicine. He completed his pediatric training, including serving as chief resident and then a fellowship in child neurology at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. Welcome, Drs. Bennett and Sally Shaywitz.
Can everybody hear me? I think so. Can everybody see the slide? Or would it be better to darken it? Okay. Well, first, let me thank you. I had no idea what yeoman's work you're being asked to do. So thank you. And it's a real pleasure and privilege to be here for the Dyslexia Resource Center and the fabulous work the center is doing and can do.
You might want to hold that because as you get away from
You see, when you're married to someone for a long time, they just tell you what to do the whole time. So just get used to it. Anything else? What? That's good. Yeah. Okay. So, again, the Dyslexia Resource Center is extraordinary, and we had an example this morning. We spoke at Our Lady of the Lake Grand Rounds, and there was a young woman who had a question, and the Resource Center was the optimal place for her to go, and she was so grateful. So what we've chosen to title our talk is Dyslexia, an explanation and potential solution to the education crisis. So dyslexia is a paradox, and that's what's hard for people to understand. You look at someone who's dyslexic, they look like everybody else. So you can't identify them by just looking. So then you say, well, slow readers. I know people who, are they smart? Can they do it? And that's the paradox. People who are dyslexic are slow readers, but fast thinkers. Slow reader, fast thinker. And I'm so glad we have such a wonderful cross-section of people attending this event. Well, in 1 minute it'll be afternoon, so I'll say this afternoon. Because we, as a community, all of you, all of us, can get together and change the lives for the better of 1 out of 5 children. It can be done, but you can't be passive. You have to do it. And I am a great admirer of Dr. Laura Cassidy, because she's actually done it. You give her credit for the idea, but oh my God, the implementation. And truly, she's very modest too. So, let's continue. So, can you see? What will a dyslexic child's future look like? Well, if we look at data from studies of prisons, close to 50% of incarcerated prisoners are dyslexic. I never trust studies, so I actually looked at this very carefully and went over it. It's accurate. Not only is accurate, but as you can see here, sadly, many are diagnosed in prison, but overlooked in school. Can you imagine that? You're going to school, and a major function is to learn to read, and you couldn't, and the school couldn't figure out, or try to, what's wrong with you. And yet, when you're in prison, they do. So should we have kids start kindergarten in prison and have them identified? I don't think so. So those who are often diagnosed in prison, who have been overlooked in school, often have lost faith in themselves and in society, dropped out, and found while they couldn't read, they could count money and do other things like that. But the good thing is, it doesn't have to be this way. And I'm going to tell you to sit over there, as you can see. Okay, so I want to show you a little video.
Go back.
Go back? Okay. Okay, so it's going to be a
The
video.
thing that's really difficult for me is that I didn't really realize what I had, so I would always think I was dumb. And it was just really tough.
She seemed very anxious, and then she would call me from the nurse's office, and she had stomach aches, and then I think that she just at one point said, my brain isn't working. I don't know what's going on.
So I'm sure so many of you have seen, as your students, as your children, as friends' children, this goes on, and we have a whole huge number of children thinking they're not smart, and school isn't for them. So So this little girl's name is Skye Lucas. And she's become a very good, she and her family, good friends of ours. What was helpful for Skye is that she was identified early as at risk and then as dyslexic. She attended a specialized school for dyslexic students, Windward, which is a tuition-based school. And she then developed a self-awareness. I'm not dumb, I'm smart. And her self-esteem grew. So here, the little girl who had been little Skye and thought she was dumb and then went to a specialized school for dyslexic children. So where is she this fall? She's in the entering class at University of Pennsylvania, class of 2021, and very, very happy.
Try to speak slowly.
This is Skye's father.
Because sometimes for me to get a word out is difficult, and I make a lot of malapropisms. I'll try to keep that to a minimum for this video. In high school, I remember a social studies teacher asking me what I wanted to do. And when I told him that I wanted to become a doctor, he kind of laughed at it. He thought, well, I would be lucky if I got into a college, let alone possibly get into medical school. I discovered that I had dyslexia when I picked up a book written by Sally Shaywitz and wanted to know all about dyslexia because my daughter was diagnosed with it. And that's when I realized you have one of those like moments, an epiphany where this is what I've struggled with my whole life. Despite not reading well, I was able to get into medical school, and I ended up being elected to the Honor Society for Medical Schools. Today I'm an orthopedic surgeon.
Oh, that's Tyler, her father's story. Is it your turn? What? Yeah, it's his turn.
But don't worry, Sally will be back very shortly. Guaranteed. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Sally and I enjoy it immensely.
I'll go sit down.
Yeah, you go. This is always a mystery because I can't remember which slides we put where, but this is another video.
Try to speak slowly.
Oh, we've already played this, so we'll just advance.
Try to speak slow.
Okay, I got it, Sal. I don't think I have any more videos. So I thought I'd begin with the very first case of dyslexia that's ever described in the literature. This is a case described by a British physician, a very British name, W. Pringle Morgan, and he described this the late 19th century, almost the turn of the 20th century, in the British Medical Journal. And he described a young man who, in that era, he called congenital word blindness. But this young man has symptoms that today we see so often in children with dyslexia. He described this 14-year-old Percy. He has always been a bright and intelligent boy, quick at games, and in no way inferior to others of his age. His great difficulty has been, and is now, his inability to learn to read. And in 1996, Sally was asked to write an article for Scientific American celebrating the 100th anniversary of the first description of dyslexia. And this is still one of the most quoted articles, and we received more requests for reprints from this article than from many others. We'd like to emphasize that Dyslexia is really, we like to use the word dyslexia and not learning disabilities. Dyslexia is specific and learning disabilities are non-specific. Learning disability is actually a general term, and we compare it to infectious diseases like, oh, you have a viral illness. Whereas dyslexia is very specific, so it's like a strep throat. Oh, you have a strep throat. I know it's a strep throat because I've cultured it, and streptococcus comes out as a culture, and we know what the causative agent is, and we know exactly how to treat it. We give some penicillin, and we can use this very accurate and specific term, dyslexia. We actually have a very recent and excellent definition of dyslexia, a 21st century definition that was passed by the U.S. Senate unanimously, bipartisan resolution 284, just this month, and passed, sponsored by Senators Cassidy and Warren and Murphy and Graham and others. And this codifies dyslexia as an unexpected difficulty in reading, unexpected for an individual who has the intelligence to be a much better reader. And we actually have scientific validation of the unexpected nature. This is Sally has a longitudinal epidemiologic study which began in 1983 when we randomly selected children in Connecticut in kindergarten, public kindergartens, and have followed that group of children for 34 years. The original 5-year-olds are now 39 years old. We followed them this entire time, and when they were in grade school and high school, we tested them every year, and every other year we gave them an IQ test. And what we were able to track is their IQ and their reading over time. And typical readers who don't have dyslexia, their IQ and their reading are dynamically linked. Sally calls them kissing cousins. IQ influences reading, reading influences IQ. And this goes along with the expectation that if you're a good reader, you're intelligent, and if you're intelligent, you're a good reader. And that's fine, and that holds for typical readers. But in dyslexic readers, it's quite different. You can be very smart and be a very poor reader. And this data is really very strong scientific validation of the unexpected nature of dyslexia. Dyslexia is very common, highly prevalent, affecting 1 child in 5. Now you may say, well, that seems like a lot of people. Is that too many? We see a lot. We see data that's a lot less. Well, in fact, if you look at school-reported data, schools don't seem to identify children with dyslexia, and they report prevalence rates of 0 or 3% or 4%, and that problem reflects the failure of schools to identify dyslexia. And when we actually study every single child, as Sally did in her epidemiologic longitudinal study, 1 in 5 students are affected. And we emphasize to be counted, you must first be identified. If you're not identified, you can't be counted. And, well, you say, that 1 in 5, that seems like a lot. Well, if you look at federal data, national data from National Assessment of Educational Progress, the so-called Nation's Report Card, and this is based on every odd year the federal government does cross-sectional studies of children in 4th grade and children in 8th grade across the country, and several thousand children. And they classify the reading into below basic and proficient and advanced. And consistently, the 1998 data it's got a star next to it because they were had different norms at that year. But for the last few years, 1/3 of the children in these national studies are below basic. In fact, only about a quarter of the children learn reading at proficient, maybe a third at advanced. But this is very worrisome. And this is even higher than the 1 in 5 that we find. So either way, dyslexia is very, very common. And it's the most common of all learning disabilities. It affects 80 to 90% of all children classified as learning disabled. We've shown it here in this pie chart. If you have a population of children with learning disability, 80 to 90% of those children are dyslexic. Dyslexia is universal. Sally's book, Overcoming Dyslexia, which she wrote in English, has been translated into many languages. Kayla read our bios, and you can hear some of them, but many alphabetic languages, but also, to our surprise, in many logographic languages. So several dialects in Chinese, a formal Mandarin, but also a more common dialect, and Japanese, and Korean as well. And this is Sally with a group of dyslexic Japanese students and their teachers and parents in our visit to Japan. So this is a common problem. It's universal. It occurs in every language. We've learned a great deal about the neurobiology of dyslexia because of the emergence of functional magnetic resonance imaging, which uses MRI, magnetic waves, to look at the brain at work. And here is Casey, one of the children who participates in our studies, and she's in the traditional imager, and she's looking up through a prism, and she has a button on her hand, and she's looking at one of our favorite tasks, which is tell us, as she's looking at these words, whether these nonsense words rhyme. And as you'll hear in a minute, we're assessing the child's phonological processing, and we like to use nonsense words because the children haven't memorized them. And this is very user-friendly, as Casey none the worse for wear at the end of her imaging. It is really a very user-friendly technology. There's no radiation, so it's ideal in children with something like dyslexia. And let me give you a short course of anatomy. We're looking at a schematic view of the left side of the brain. Here in the front is the frontal lobes. There's one here on the left side, there's another one on the right side. Behind the frontal lobes are the parietal lobes, they're shown in pink. Beneath these are the temporal lobes, shown in yellow. And behind it is the occipital lobe, shown in blue. And what's been found in many, many studies is that there are 3 important systems in reading. Again, a schematic of the left side of the brain is the front and the back of the brain. There's a system in the front of the brain around an area called Broca's area that's important in reading. Another area in the parietal temporal region around an area called Wernicke's area, that's important in reading. And still a third area important in reading, particularly for fluent reading, is called the occipital temporal or the word form system. And what's been shown in many, many studies around the world is that there's a neural signature for dyslexia. And that neural signature is schematically shown here. Left side of the brain again, front and back. Typical readers, 3 systems for reading. 1 in the front of the brain, 2 in the back of the brain. In dyslexic readers, we see a system in the front of the brain might be a bit more active than in typical readers, but the important thing is there's an inefficient functioning of those systems in the back of the brain. You just don't see them activated here. And that finding is referred to as the neural signature for dyslexia. And this has been replicated around by many, many studies. Here is one of our studies years ago showing these 3 systems activated in typical readers and inefficient functioning in the dyslexic readers, looking at sort of the brain from the side. And here again, front of the brain, back there. This is an image by one of our colleagues, Fabio Ricklin in Austria, and he did a meta-analysis. He took many studies and found that over all of these studies, the same thing I just told you we're seeing. Systems that were disruptive in the front of the brain and the back of the brain. And we also know that these neural systems are universal. This is a study of college students in England, France, and Italy, published over a decade ago by Araldo Palasu in Milan, Italy. Here's the front of the brain and the back of the brain. And regardless of the native language spoken by these college students, English, French, or Italian, the same fondness, there was this inefficient functioning of these systems in the left side of the back of the brain. And subsequently, these same findings have been reported in German dyslexic students and pretty much the same in Chinese dyslexic students. So we see that brain imaging has taught us about a neural signature for dyslexia. It's this inefficient functioning of neural systems for skilled fluent reading. And the important thing is it's made visible what was previously a hidden disability. I warn you that brain imaging is not the way you diagnose dyslexia. These nice images are created from groups of individuals with dyslexia compared to groups of individuals who are typical readers. The brain imaging is just not sensitive enough to determine an individual person. But in groups of people, you can see these very nice images. But fortunately, the diagnosis of dyslexia is not made by brain imaging in either children or adults. And Sally is going to, I promised you she would return, and here she is. And she's going to tell you that you really don't need brain imaging to diagnose dyslexia.
Okay. So, to continue with what science has taught us about dyslexia, and the key thing is to understand what is the basis. Why do children experience the difficulties they do? And I've tried to capture this in this image. So the origins of the difficulties is not reversing letters. Not at all. It's getting to the sounds of spoken language. And that difficulty leads to a set of symptoms. Problems in spoken language. You can see them even early on as children try to, if you say, oh, what rhymes with cat? In order to know that, you have to have been able to pull apart the word cat and focus on the rhyme at the end. So then you know cat, sat, rat. But even younger children who at that age should be able to do it, if they're dyslexic, they have trouble doing that. And also as children get older, knowing cognitively what they want to say, but not being able to retrieve the word. And you can imagine how embarrassing it is. The teacher calls on you, oh, I know, and it doesn't come out of your mouth. That's word retrieval difficulties. Learning the letters and associating sounds to letters, and eventually being able to read fluently, that's accurately, rapidly, and with good understanding. Being able to spell. Reading begins with decoding. Spelling is encoding, taking the spoken word and putting it into print. And also learning a foreign language. If you've had difficulty getting into the spoken language of your primary, spoken language system of your primary language, can you imagine what happens when you try to learn a secondary language? It's a very common problem. And we're working very, very hard to have schools understand this, particularly as children go up in the grades and in high school. You must take this foreign language, you must take that. Well, what if you're dyslexic? And I will tell you from personal experience, we've been able to convince Yale University to understand that and to offer and it's a very strict protocol. If you're diagnosed as dyslexic, we can do that, and you can request a partial waiver of the foreign language requirement so that you can take a course in the history or sociology of a country that doesn't speak English. And just to give you an example of an experience we had, we often speak for the Yale Alumni Association. And one year we were speaking and I said something like this, and at the end of the lecture, this man was all red in the face and teary-eyed, and he came racing down the stairs. And he said, I have dyslexia. And I tried to take French when I was at Yale. I couldn't do it. It was such a struggle. But finally, my professor said to me, okay, I will pass you on 2 conditions. The first is if you could say my name is in French, je m'appelle, whatever, he could do that. But the second was the really critical one. And you know what the second was? He couldn't tell anyone ever that he took French at Yale. So, and we've now had this partial waiver for maybe 15, 20 years, and it's advanced to the point that the foreign language professors will call me and say, Dr. Shaywitz, this young lady or this young man has tried so hard, and they've had tutors, they can't do it. And the real tragic part is, it's taking their time and energy from courses they could succeed in. So I'm appointing each one of you as a deputy to ensure that high schools and colleges offer partial waivers, because it's following what we know scientifically and clinically. So the question is, why does print have meaning? Why, when we look at the circles and lines, do we know they make letters, and the letters go together to make words, and the words have meaning? So, we as humans evolved to speak. It's natural. You watch a baby, and they first go ba ba ba, and then suddenly they're talking, and talking more. Very natural. Reading is not natural. It's acquired. And you know what that means? It has to be taught. So what do you teach? Well, you try to teach how to connect these lines and circles to make up words to something that has inherent meaning, and that is something of the sounds of spoken language, the phonology. And Leonard Bloomfield, almost 100 years ago, I think got this relationship between written and spoken language just exactly right when he wrote, writing is a way of recording spoken language by visible marks. And that then follows the alphabetic principle that states words are just not whole envelopes of sound. They're made up of segments representing the sounds. The word cat you can pull apart into k, a, and t. And then you can link the letters and sounds and read the word. And here I've tried to develop this figure that I have competition below. So if you want to say the word cat, you have to go into your internal dictionary, your lexicon, if you will, access and retrieve the appropriate phonemes, as is shown here, serially order them, and then utter the word. In reading, it's just about the reverse process. You start with the intact word, you transform the C into the P, the A into the A, the T into the T, blend the sounds together, and you utter the word. So now I want to talk about dyslexia, the clinical entity. So you could look for school-age clues, and I've tried to summarize them here in more detail. beginning with the preschool years. So a child would have trouble learning his or her letters, letter sounds, sounding out words. You know what the scariest part is for a dyslexic child in class? You know, reading aloud in front of your peers and sometimes in front of your teacher. I've had the privilege of speaking to some of the most renowned people in the world who are successful adults. And I'll say to them, what do you remember about school? And some of them will even cry, the horror of being called on to read aloud, because it doesn't come out. And sometimes the children are not very kind. They start making fun or teasing, and they go to the playground, they get bullied. And sometimes teachers too say, but you knew this yesterday, how could you not know it today? And if you're dyslexic, you're going to be a slow reader, and often say, oh, you get so tired of reading, oh, reading is boring. So you can see in spoken language word retrieval difficulties, reading that's slow, often choppy, because when you come across a word you don't know, you have no strategy. How do you figure it out? So you have a lot of pauses, problems in spelling, and then I can sometimes see who at my university is dyslexic. I look at their spelling and we need to talk. Poor handwriting. And this is very, very important. Attention. There is a big comorbidity or overlap between dyslexia and attention disorder. But in addition, people who are dyslexic, when you're a typical reader, oh, it's such a pleasure. You turn the pages and it's all automatic. So you may use up a little bit of attention, but not a whole lot. In contrast, if you're a dyslexic reader, it's work. You're a manual reader. And in order to read, you have to use up so much attention. So you get tired, you get frustrated, you look out the window, you're sensitive to noise. So it's such a sad thing, because that's how they get into trouble. Why are you looking out the window? Why don't you pay attention? They've used up their attention often. Problems, as we said, with foreign language. And almost universally, we see in dyslexic children and adults, blows to your self-esteem and anxiety. You don't know when it's going to hit you again. You don't know what it is. It's far better if you know at least what you have. But people who don't walk around, uh-oh, when is it going to come? When am I going to say the wrong thing or not finish the reading? But there are also very important strengths. Remember, it's a paradox. And here, we call it our so-called yellow card. And we travel a great deal. And if you're sitting next to us, we're going to talk about dyslexia. I promise you. And I often say to people, well, what is it? And I'm no longer amazed at the answers, because they're so, often, oh, it's seeing words backwards. No. So what we did is we developed this card. And again, remember, dyslexia is a paradox, slow reader, fast thinker. So they're in pairs. And what I tried to show here is you may be dyslexic if you can find the point. Okay. So they're in pairs. The top is a weakness, the bottom is a strength, and it goes on. And I will read them with you or for you. Thank you. So, remember, there's a negative always paired with a positive. You may be dyslexic if you read slowly and with much effort. Are often the one to solve the problem. Can't spell, have messy handwriting. Your writing shows terrific imagination. In Overcoming Dyslexia, I wrote about a number of very famous writers who just can't spell. And one of them, unfortunately, he's passed away, was a man named Stephen Cannell. If you ever watched on television the A-Team or Mr. T, programs like that, he wrote them. And he said, as I went through school, I never thought I could write. And you know why? Because he was always having points taken off for spelling. And then he went, I think in Iowa, they have a wonderful creator writers workshop. And I had this wonderful professor, I think it was Ralph Salzberg, if I recall correctly. And you know what he did? He ignored the spelling, but he saw the creativity, he saw the imagination. So we need to make sure that teachers can recognize, my own recommendation is to separate grades for spelling from grades for imagination and creativity. You have trouble remembering dates and names, and you think out of the box and grasp the big picture. You have difficulty retrieving and pronouncing words. At the same time, you have a terrific vocabulary and ideas. And this is our conceptual model of dyslexia. We refer to it as a sea of strengths model. And what you can see here is at the center, I refer to it as an island of weakness, decoding, but surrounded by a sea of strengths in reasoning, concept formation, comprehension, problem solving, critical thinking. I've just picked several examples. So you want to be able to identify those too. So you identify and remediate the weakness, but also identify the strengths and make sure the child has access to them, most commonly through accommodations. And the child should know that he just doesn't have the weakness. He has these strengths. And what we, particularly all of you here today, need to keep in mind, you can teach children to read, dyslexic children, other. It's very hard to teach children to think and to have that higher level sea of strength. So we can't have children give up on themselves and not know that they may be a slow reader, but they can be a fast thinker. In adolescence, young adult blues, you still have problems with spoken language, mispronunciation. I've heard so many say, it was on the tip of my tongue, I knew what I wanted to say. And then you know what happened? The person starts to use a smaller vocabulary and avoid the words that they may mispronounce. They understand them, but they don't say them. And what you have too is the lack of fluency, the fatigue in reading, the slow reading, avoidance of reading. Spelling remains disastrous, and a sacrifice of social life for studying. I've met so many students, yeah, well, on Friday night they say, oh, I'm not feeling well, I don't want to go to the basketball game. Or I have a headache, or this, and they study all the time. But they're embarrassed, so often they keep it from their friends. And again, we have to keep in mind that they have these incredible strengths. And I showed you that a moment ago. So how do you make a diagnosis? Just the way we make a diagnosis in other clinical conditions. If you understand what the problem is, getting to the sounds of spoken language, you take a history. You ask about examples of the child's spoken language, written language, etc. And you look for a disparity between reading and intelligence. And you look for indications of phonologic difficulties, slow reading, and along with better comprehension. The assessment of fluency is critical. And sometimes it's almost funny, the myths about dyslexia. So I thought I'd put them all together and just review them with you. One of the biggest, it's rare. Yeah, well, if you're in a school and they don't identify it, very rare. If you're the person living with it, or you've been evaluated, it's quite common. Oh my goodness, it's a visual problem. And people end up seeing optometrists and getting one glass prescription after another. You may use your eyes to read, but you use your brain to figure it out, and it involves language. It's outgrown. I hear that so often. Here's the secret. It's not outgrown. It's persistent. It's lifelong. Even as we hopefully reading improves, you're still dyslexic. So, and that's what I've written here, persistent. And people think, oh, he's dyslexic, he can't read. Yes, he can, but it's effortful, and he struggles, or she's slow at it. And finally, people think, well, slow reader, slow thinker, when in fact, you can be very intelligent and struggle to read. I heard that one institution, a child was diagnosed as dyslexic, and one of the house head of that particular college was given this information. And then the student came to see him, and you know what this person did, the dean at this college? He spoke to him so slowly, because he thought slow reader means slow reader. It would be funny if it wasn't sad and hurtful. And this is also very important to be aware of, and that is the development of reading over time. Reading growth, the improvement in reading, is maximal the first few years, and then it plateaus. So you know what that means? We have to get to the children early and catch them on that trajectory of rapid growth. And I will share with you now relatively new data that shows that the reading gap between typical and dyslexic readers is already present at first grade and persists. So we have to back off. I used to hear you read by grade 3, read by grade 4. What are you talking about? You know what that gap is going to be? Read by grade 1, or at least have your at-risk status identified and be diagnosed and receive appropriate intervention. And here is a really important figure. And what that is, and this was published in the Journal of Pediatrics in 2015. This shows that the achievement gap between typical readers and dyslexic readers, here are the grades. See, this is the gap. When do you see it? First grade. Not third grade, not fifth. Oh, it's still there. But when did it begin? So how can we let our children struggle and think they're dumb and school is not for them by doing nothing? And I hear it and I repeat it because so many parents have told me they became concerned and they heard from a teacher, don't worry, it'll click in later. So this mother was told this in first grade, and at fifth grade, she asked, well, when is it going to click in? Or you hear, he's a boy. So, what's that supposed to mean? Or has a December birthday. So, the expectation has to be able to identify who's struggling and get that child help. What I'm talking about is early screening. It can be so efficient and so effective, and every child deserves to be part of universal screening, but it's not done as often as it should be.
And then, as one parent told me, I wonder what it feels like the first time a child is sitting in class and suddenly discovers that he or she can't do what everybody around them is doing. And then, as one parent told me, I wonder what it feels like the first time a child is sitting in class and suddenly discovers that he or she can't do what everybody around them is doing.
Fraternal. want to share with you now, what do we know and what can we do? What we know is dyslexia is real. It's very prevalent. Don't ask schools. They won't agree. Ask anybody else. Dyslexia, the impact occurs early and help is often delayed. Now, what can we do? We have to turn that knowledge into action. All of you, or many of you, went to school because you cared about kids, you wanted to learn about education, or you have children, or you have something to do with policy. So that means you have to act. If not you, then who? Okay? And now it is possible to identify at-risk status as early as kindergarten and first grade. When we saw these data, we said, oh my goodness, something has to be done. So we developed a dyslexia screen. And we said, this has to be done for children universally in every school district, every state in the union. But we knew we couldn't do that. So we gave it to Pearson Publishers. I had been invited to be one of the expert advisors when they redid the Webster 5, the WISC 5, and so we got to know each other in a good way. So they called it the Shaywitz Dyslexia Screen, and it's an evidence-based way to identify children who are at risk. So the goal is to find children most at risk for dyslexia, target them for extra help as early as possible. It's brief, and you can do universal screening of all children in kindergarten, first grade, or even second grade. And it engages the teacher. Who knows the child better? The teacher is the one that's worked with the child daily, who's tried to teach the child and knows where the child's had difficulty and where the child succeeded. You want to identify the pool of children who are at risk for dyslexia. And what's so nice about this, it's completed on a tablet, takes 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and it's dichotomized. You get the answer right away. Yes, no, at risk, or not. It has strong psychometrics. It's extremely efficient and inexpensive. I think it costs 99 cents. So the failure, so let's look at it the other way. What if you fail to screen for and diagnose dyslexia? Children, far too many, are not identified, and they don't receive evidence-based instruction. They continue to struggle, and they see themselves as a failure and as dumb. That's what the outcome is. It's horrible because they have no knowledge of what his or her difficulty is, that it even has a name. There's no self-awareness that that child can't do what everyone around them can do. And they begin to feel left out, excluded, stupid, and that school is not for them. And what happens far too frequently, they're bullied, they're teased, and they start thinking of ways to avoid getting called on to read aloud. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. Or if I get into trouble, I can be sent to the principal's office, and I don't need to be called on to read aloud. And that happens. And they'd rather be sent to the principal's office than read aloud in class because they get bullied and teased so much, and they see themselves as not meant for school. They drop out, and there's a far too high prevalence of prison, addiction, and self-harm. For example, dyslexic students are half as likely to go to college and have significantly higher unemployment and lower lifetime earnings. For example, in our own study, in the early 20s, we found that twice as many dyslexic compared to controls, 45% compared to 23%, had no education past high school. Unemployment was 3 times as high, and they became teenage parents. Men 4 times as likely, women 3 times as likely. And here the high school dropout rate for typical and dyslexic readers, and you can see the dyslexic readers drop out 3 times as frequently. So this is obviously not good for the student, for their family, but for the community and for the country. And what are the barriers? Schools fail to use early screening. Schools' failure to accept the dyslexia diagnosis. That's bizarre. Or schools say they don't believe in it. You know what I say? In terms of believing, you can believe in any religion you want. That's your choice. But when there's strong scientific evidence that says this is real, this is prevalent, and we understand it and we can help it, that's uncomfortable and unethical. And so schools often fail to provide evidence-based interventions and accommodations, and we go into this horrendous watch them fail model as the student goes downhill, loses his self-esteem and his or her anxiety. So one thing that I would strongly talk about, use the word dyslexia. If the child is dyslexic, we shouldn't be saying, oh, he's dyslexic and other learning disabilities. You know, you want to be as specific as you can be because it's highly relevant and has an explanatory meaning, and science has provided us all the important components, definition, cognitive basis, or biological basis, etc. So it's incredible to see the impact when a student knows what he has, its name, and what it does. It's very empowering. It provides the student with self-understanding and self-awareness of what she or he has and what she needs to do, what he needs to succeed. And they have a community to join. There are other dyslexics, and one of the major, I think, advantages of a school for dyslexic children, you're in a community. You don't need a hide. You're not an afterthought. You're the focus, and you meet other kids who are dyslexic. You don't have to like them, but you say, oh, they're smart. And for parents and teachers, and importantly, the student, him or herself, the knowledge that she or he is dyslexic brings with him the critical information that he or she is not stupid or lazy. So let's do a reality check here. The goal is fluent reading with good comprehension. And it certainly isn't a sprint. It's a long marathon. It's not simply injection of 12 weeks of tutoring and decoding. You know, RTI has become very, very common, which is amazing because in 2015, the U.S. Department of Education released a very good large-scale report. Guess what? First graders who had been subject to RTI did much poorer than a control group who didn't have RTI. It makes no sense. You pull out a child for 45 minutes 2 times a week, and where do they go back to? They go back to the class that's using methods that don't help them. Then you go to other class, history, sociology, you're way behind. It doesn't work. And then you're in purgatory, known as Tier 2, forever. So it may take months to years, in truth, to improve fluency. So in terms of meeting the needs of dyslexic students, what? Evidence-based instruction early with careful monitoring of progress. Again, waiting is harmful and not acceptable. Where? Think of what you would want for your own child. And I see some parents I know here, and they know, and that is a school whose core mission is to focus on your child, on a dyslexic student, to educate them, Not where, oh my God, a bother. What are we going to do? Well, let's just wait. And so in a school whose core mission is to educate dyslexic students are a priority rather than just tolerant. And there are specialized schools with dyslexia, good schools. We know them well. Windward School in New York, Park Century School in LA, and the Lana School in Washington, D.C. The difficulty for many parents is there's a large tuition. So, some lady, I won't embarrass her, but you all know who she is, and we can all stare at her right now, had a dyslexic child who she's very proud of, and wanted to bring help not only to her child, but to all dyslexic children, and had the brilliance to establish a specialized public charter school, Louisiana Key Academy in Baton Rouge, but even more the endurance to implement what is needed. And Bennett and I had the pleasure and privilege of visiting yesterday. We were blown away by everything about it. The teachers, the students, what we saw was the workers, the drama class, the art class. I mean, it's a school, a real school that teaches children, but with deep understanding of what their needs are. And here we had a very special event on October 4th in Washington, D.C. And here's a picture of the heads of specialized schools for dyslexia. This is Jay Russell, the head of Windward, a good friend. This is Doug Phelps, head of Park Century. I sit on the board there, also become a good friend. Captain Chance, head of the lab school, and Lane McIntyre, head of the Oakwood School. There's one outlier, and you know who she is. Here we see Laura Cassidy. She's the head of a specialized school too, but it's a public charter school. And it was so, I don't even know the right way to describe it, but we met several parents coincidentally, and they just wanted to tell us how being at LKA has changed their child's life for the better, how the teachers understand their child, and the child just has had a 360-degree turnaround. Why can't all dyslexic children have that? So, specialized school for dyslexia, school climate, I like to call it. And what that means is everything around you, the atmosphere, the understanding of dyslexia is palpable. You don't have to hide. No one's afraid to say dyslexia. And dyslexia is the focus. And children progress and learn. And I see that there, one of the math teachers, who was such a pleasure to speak to yesterday, and his pleasure at teaching the students math and helping them to learn, and so many of the other teachers and heads. Small classes. You can't be in a class of 30 that has a range of children, gifted, struggling children who have developmental delay, second language learners, dyslexia, other things, and we're going to differentiate. But on paper, you try to do it with 30 kids. I read an article just the other day where the author wrote, differentiated instruction sounds right, but the only ones who are now proponents are those who've never tried it. You can't find a person who's tried it and say, oh, this worked. It don't. Evidence-based methods that have proven efficacy, knowledgeable, flexible, caring teachers. Boy, did I meet them yesterday. It was such a wonderful event. Instruction that's intense and in sufficient duration. It goes on all the time. It's not pull out. It's pull in. Let's get together as a team and do it. There's consistency in instruction across all classes. So you don't have specialized reading and then go to history and the teacher's clueless about what you need and how to read. And
Constant communication between teachers.
And you're a part of the community. Nobody's going to laugh at you when you read aloud in class because they know they may stumble and will, just like you have. And you're not teased or bullied because of a reading difficulty. So how can we not support public charter schools like No Take and Dyslexia and understand them and make sure they're here permanently for dyslexic students? And here's a picture of LKA with one of the students. And here, when you think about,
to do 3 or 4 heart operations.
He's
So if I have to
dyslexic,
pick up the
cardiac
phone
surgeon.
and call somebody and tell them that their loved one's operation is over.
And head of the
That name
Cleveland Clinic.
I've never seen before. I'm in a panic about how I'm going to pronounce the name. I have no idea how to do it.
I'm not sure how much.
David Boyd, the outstanding attorney, National Relation Dyslexia.
Even though I may read at a pace that's 1/2 or 1/3 the pace that other people will be reading at the end of that period, I will learn a lot and absorb a lot more than many people.
I begin to find my mind work differently about things. And I look at a problem and I come up with different ways of thinking about it. And as a result, now I've got probably 10 or so things that I've invented and 30 patents.
I can sort of see the end zone of the issue before other people have been able to. Maybe I'm not as sequential as other people need to be. I can sort of move ahead in a more radical way to sort of visualize what the end zone might be, where other people may have to go through the sequence of various things to get there. And I know that's frustrating to some of my cohorts here at the company. Maybe I'm not burdened by the sequential thinking that so many people are.
Taking care of patients.
This is Karen Santucci. She's a pediatrician and head of our ER at Yale.
But are you processing information?
I'm reminded of it when I read, because I read painfully slowly and it's hard. But I visualize things differently. I think about things differently than other people do, and that just seems natural to me.
You find they
David Boyd,
do something like I do.
also dyslexic.
On lawsuits and courts. There are lots of times when the adaptations actually end up making you stronger than you would have been.
You have these two parts, the weakness and the strengths. People who are dyslexic, for example, have often been described as being very creative, thinking out of the box, being able to see the big picture and solve problems very well.
I don't think that it really makes me less of a person. I think it actually
He's
makes me more of a
dyslexic.
person because it gives me better perspective, gives me 2 sights of what I'm looking at. And when I'm in class, I can get the right answer, except I just have a different way of looking at it. And that's not always a bad thing.
What we now know is you can be quite intelligent and still read very slowly. And in fact, is if you look at the top tier of any profession, writers, people in cinema, physicians, Nobel laureates, attorneys, people in business and finance, there's a disproportionately high number of people who are dyslexic. People who are dyslexic are not going to be your sequential, very literal thinkers. They're going to be the out-of-the-box thinkers.
I think we are moving in the right direction, but we are moving painfully slow and at the expense of an untold number of lives that are just, if not wasted, they are at least put in a situation in which people cannot reach their potential. And that's a terribly unfair thing to them, and it's a terribly wasteful thing for our society.
So again, to reinforce that dyslexia is a paradox. The same person has both strengths and weaknesses. And the question for you all as a community is, should this person's life be defined by his or her high thinking ability and excellent reasoning, or by slow reading, poor spelling, and word retrieval problems? So here is a little dyslexic child, and the question is, which road will be taken? Well, one road is one with the child not being screened or diagnosed. EBI is evidence-based intervention. Doesn't get that, or accommodations, school failure, unrealized potential, low self-esteem, so it's a loss to that child and to society. And what characterizes his or her life is that achievement gap, the weakness. And the question is, what might have been, and I'll tell you a little anecdote now. I didn't even know this, but Yale has online courses you could register for. And what they are, you can be anywhere, but you have to come in once a month. And we see anyone at Yale at any level who might have dyslexia. So there's this one individual who was part of an online nursing associate program, and he was referred to us and evaluated. And one Friday, I'm sitting in my office and I'm looking through his evaluation, and I said, oh my God, his IQ is in the superior range. His reading was in the teens. And I said, oh, I better tell him this quickly. So I called the nursing office, and they gave me his number somewhere in the South. And I called him, and fortunately he answered, and I told him who I was. And I was calling to tell him that he was dyslexic and explain that. But more than that, I wanted to tell him how smart he was. And then suddenly, there was nothing. I said, oh my God, did we lose connection? And I said, are you okay? Are you still there? And he said to me, yes, but I'm crying. And I said to him, so am I. And we made up to meet in my office when he came back to Yale. You know how old this gentleman is? 54 years old. And all he could talk about is, oh my, if I had known this earlier. I get the chills every time I talk about this. How different my life might have been. What different choices I would have been able to make. You know, I'm talking, so I can say 54 isn't that old, but it's pretty old to decide what career you want or what your life is going to be. And that was denied him because nobody identified him. No one helped him, and he's so smart. We can't let that happen time and time and time and time again, because that is what's happening. So if you take that road, you can end up at 54, and I'll just add to that anecdote. We lectured for Representative Westerman and the Arkansas State Department of Education a year or so ago, and on dyslexia. And we were surprised to receive a call on our home telephone number, which is unlisted, we thought. And it was from a man that asked, is it ever too late? Can you get diagnosed? Apparently, this gentleman's great-great-granddaughter had been at our lecture. This gentleman, 94 years old, and he said he spent a lifetime. Who am I? Am I smart? Am I dumb? I think he sold agricultural equipment. And it's not fair. It's just not right. Because if, on the other hand, you take this path and go to a specialized school like LKA and receive evidence-based instruction and accommodations, lo and behold, you can experience academic success and the self-knowledge that you are dyslexic, and it's empowering. So you can go on to a life of fulfillment, a contributor to society, and your potential is realized, your strengths characterize your life, and here I think it's a wonderful life. But you're really on the road to that. So what are we going to have for our children? Here's a slide, and it's an iceberg. And you know, icebergs are 90% underwater. And I liken that to what happens with dyslexic children. Here on the top of the iceberg are all these successful dyslexics: Ari Emanuel, Diane Swank, can you see it? David Boyes, Dr. Toby Cosgrove, and Brian Grazer. Brian Grazer is an Academy Award-winning producer and is also writing. But here are all these children asking for help. Will you help us? Will you screen us? Will you identify us? Will you have us be able to go to a specialized school where we can fulfill our potential? And we have to say yes to that. And I have this in here. That's me talking to the teachers at LKA yesterday. It seems a long time ago. But I put this in because I just don't know how to express what that experience being at LKA was like. Seeing everybody on board, seeing dyslexia celebrated, seeing children, and with a great video that the drama teacher has used me, I am dyslexic. I don't know how to say it, but I am. And I'm proud. Every person should visit LKA. Thank you, Laura. But it's spectacular in its goodness, in its scientific validity, and what it does for children and how it changes lives. So I actually believe I will stop here and say thank you to other graduates.